All right, let's dive into the story of Jeroboam the First. This is a guy whose rise from a royal officer to a rebel king was honestly nothing short of spectacular. But that's not what he's remembered for. Nope. He's remembered for one single decision that basically poisoned his own kingdom from day one, making him the tragic founder of a nation that was, in many ways, built to fail. So that's the big question, right? How can one political move, a decision made completely out of fear, end up shaping the next 200 years of a nation's history? To really get a handle on Jeroboam's fateful choice, we've got to go back and look at the crisis he inherited at the very end of a golden but really, really fractured age. So our story kicks off around 940 BC, during the final years of King Solomon's reign. Now, on the surface, his kingdom was incredible, a powerhouse of wealth and influence, but underneath all that glitter, a deep, simmering resentment was brewing, especially up in the northern tribes. And right in the middle of all this tension, you've got this guy, Jeroboam. He wasn't born into royalty. He was the son of a widow from the super influential northern tribe of Ephraim. He was a man who got ahead simply because he was talented and worked hard. He was so good, in fact, that King Solomon himself noticed him. So what was fueling all this anger? Well, it was a system of state-controlled forced labor known as amzah. All of Solomon's legendary building projects, like the Great Temple in Jerusalem, were built with the sweat of his own people. And the northern tribes felt like they were shouldering way more than their fair share of the load. And here is the great irony in all this. Solomon himself appoints Jeroboam to oversee these very labor projects in the north. This gives Jeroboam a front-row seat to his people's suffering and a massive platform of influence. He wasn't some outsider. He was an insider who knew exactly where the cracks in the system were. Then, one day, something happens that changes everything. A prophet named Ahijah meets Jeroboam on the road and does something pretty dramatic. He takes his brand new cloak, rips it into 12 pieces, one for each tribe of Israel, and hands 10 of them to Jeroboam. I mean, the message could not have been any clearer. The kingdom is about to be torn in two, and you, Jeroboam, are going to rule 10 of those tribes. Well, news like that travels fast. When Solomon heard about it, he stopped seeing a talented manager and started seeing a traitor. Jeroboam had to literally run for his life. He found refuge down in Egypt with Pharaoh Shishak, where he'd just have to wait for his moment. And that moment finally came in 931 BC when King Solomon died. All that tension that had been building for decades was about to boil over, and the United Kingdom was about to be shattered for good. Solomon's son Rehoboam gets a golden opportunity to fix things. The northern tribes come to him with a perfectly reasonable request. Hey, ease up on the forced labor and taxes, and we'll gladly serve you. But Rehoboam, he ignores his dad's experienced advisors, listens to his arrogant young friends instead, and basically says, "You think my dad was tough? I'm going to be even tougher." It was a political blunder of, well, biblical proportions. That was it. That was the last straw. The response was this famous cry of rebellion. It was a formal declaration of independence. The united monarchy was done. And the northern tribes immediately sent for Jeroboam, who was still in Egypt, and they made him their king. So the nation is now officially split in two. You have Jeroboam ruling over the 10 northern tribes in a new kingdom called Israel. And down in the south, Rehoboam is left with just the kingdom of Judah, which included the old capital Jerusalem and the tribes of Judah and Benjamin. And you can see right here, this split had massive long-term consequences. The northern kingdom, Israel, the one founded on this rebellion, would only last for about 200 years before being completely wiped off the map by the Assyrian Empire. Its entire existence was basically defined by the instability that was baked in from the very beginning. Okay, so Jeroboam has his kingdom, but he immediately has a massive problem. How does he keep it? How does he stop his people from just drifting back to the old capital, and maybe back to the old dynasty? Well, his solution would become his kingdom's fatal flaw. Think about it. Jeroboam had a huge political headache. The one central place of worship for all Israelites, the temple, was in Jerusalem, which was now the capital city of his enemy. 3 times a year, his own citizens were supposed to go there for religious festivals. He was terrified that these trips would rekindle their old loyalties and end up costing him his crown. So what does he do? He creates a brand new, state-controlled religion from scratch. He says, forget the one temple in Jerusalem, and sets up two new national shrines on the borders of his kingdom, at Bethel and Dan. Instead of the traditional focus of worship, he sets up two golden calves. And this is key. He boots the official priesthood and replaces them with his own political appointees. He even changes the dates of the major religious festivals. This was a total religious overhaul, all for the sake of political control. And this act, this blending of politics and religion, designed purely to secure his own power, became known for the next 2 centuries simply as the sin of Jeroboam. It was like he injected a spiritual poison right into the heart of his new nation. The reaction was not long in coming. You see, the very foundation of Jeroboam's kingdom was condemned almost as soon as he laid it, and the consequences would come for his family and for his people. The pushback was immediate and dramatic. Right at the dedication ceremony for his new altar at Bethel, a prophet from the rival kingdom of Judah shows up and pronounces a curse on it. And he gets incredibly specific, saying that a future king from David's line, a king named Josiah, would one day show up and completely destroy that very altar. Now, just let that sink in for a second. This wasn't some vague warning. This was a prophecy that named a specific king and a specific action that wouldn't actually happen for another 300 years. This was a divine judgment with a very, very long memory. And what's wild is that the historical record shows that about 300 years later, a king of Judah named Josiah did exactly that. During a huge religious reform, he marched north and tore down Jeroboam's altar at Bethel. The prophecy was fulfilled to the letter. But the judgment wasn't just for the distant future. It was also immediate and deeply personal. When Jeroboam's own son got deathly ill, he sent his wife, in disguise, back to Ahijah. Yep, the same prophet who first told him he'd be king. But this time, Ahijah's message was pure doom. He said because of this great sin, Jeroboam's entire family line would be violently wiped out. And sure enough, that's what happened. His son and heir, Nadab, was assassinated just 2 years into his reign. So after a 22-year reign, what was the ultimate takeaway from this founder king? Well, he succeeded in building a new nation, but in the process, he put it on a one-way track to self-destruction. So what's his final legacy? Look, he absolutely founded a kingdom. That's true. But his solution, this state religion, it became a spiritual poison that led to constant instability for 200 years. The kingdom churned through 9 different royal dynasties in that short time. In the end, his greatest legacy was becoming the poster boy for a failed king. Every single ruler who came after him in the north was measured against one simple, damning question. Did they follow the sin of Jeroboam? This phrase right here becomes the tragic tagline, the epitaph for almost every king who followed him. It's the final verdict on a leader whose desperate, fear-based attempt to secure his own throne ended up dooming an entire nation. The story of Jeroboam is just a stark reminder that the choices made by one person in power really can and really do echo for generations to come.